All right, let's jump right into today's explainer. We are embarking on a really epic journey that is honestly going to completely shatter your biological biases. We're going to dive into a scientifically rigorous thought experiment to explore the absolute limits of biology. We're imagining a life form built not out of carbon, but out of solid iron. Sound crazy? Just wait. Let's go.
Whenever astrobiologists look up at the stars, they are obsessively hunting for Earth 2.0. They want liquid water, mild temperatures, and carbon. But that assumption completely ignores the extreme, violent, and honestly deeply creative biological environments that could exist out in the wider universe.
So let's compare the two. Carbon is the ultimate biological Lego brick, right? With its 4 valence electrons, it forms the rigid, stable chains of our DNA. It's safe. But iron is a transition metal. With its dynamic, multi-armed d orbitals, it acts more like a master architect of coordination chemistry. It can pull in multiple different molecules at once to create these incredible, complex 3D biological geometries.
So where would this kind of heavy metal biology actually thrive? Picture a world baking at a staggering 800 degrees Celsius. We'll call it Hephaestus Prime. Now, on Earth, iron is basically dead. It just sits there and rusts. But at 800 degrees, on an exposed, hyperdense planetary core, iron doesn't rust. It literally dances in these vast, churning oceans of liquid metal.
Now, Hephaestus Prime might sound like a total wasteland to us. It's a stripped gas giant core with 50 times Earth's atmospheric pressure, oceans of molten sulfur, and these massive, crackling electrical storms. But here's the thing. To high-temperature chemistry, this isn't a wasteland at all. It is the absolute perfect, hyper-pressurized crucible for heavy metals to become incredibly dynamic and, well, alive.
Now, what's really interesting about this is that it isn't just science fiction. It's real, proven chemistry. Enter polyoxometalates, or POMs. Real-world chemists have shown that under extreme heat and pressure, transition metals will actually naturally self-assemble into giant cage-like structures. They literally form microscopic, hollow, inorganic cell membranes all on their own.
But you might be wondering, how does a metallic organism replicate without our good old chemical DNA? Well, first, the mother cell forms an iron sulfide crystalline wire. Then, using a process called spin glass templating, it casts a magnetic field to align raw metals in a newly forming daughter cell. So, instead of passing down chemical compounds, it perfectly copies its genetic blueprints purely through magnetism.
And this brilliantly illustrates how their biology works. This metallic genetic code operates exactly like a computer hard drive, just flipping microscopic magnetic domains into binary states, ones and zeros. In this type of biology, a genetic mutation isn't some chemical copying error. No, a mutation is a cosmic ray or a massive magnetic storm randomly flipping a single bit of life.
All right, moving into Section 1, the iron ecosystem, evolution of the magnetosphere. Let's see what happens when we scale this biology up.
Scaling up from a single metallic cell, evolution on a planet like this takes a radical turn. Instead of leafy carbon-based plants, the flora here are pharophytes. Think fractal, jagged lightning bolts performing magnetosynthesis. They are literally harvesting electrical currents directly from the planet's intense magnetic field. And feeding on them are the lithograzers, these fluid, shifting polyhedrons of liquid metal. Their whole metabolism works by creating localized galvanic short circuits to drain the plant's battery power.
But of course, where there's a thriving ecosystem, there is always an apex predator. Meet the lodestone leviathan. This is a blind biological beast roughly the size of a blue whale, composed entirely of overlapping, shifting plates of polarized iron. It doesn't just hunt, it completely weaponizes the fundamental laws of physics to dominate this metallic food chain. This creature tracks its prey through sheer evolutionary perfection. It's got a hypersensitive magnetoreceptor skull and glides using silent magnet hydrodynamic drive propulsion. And when it strikes, it doesn't chew. It unleashes a blinding, directed electromagnetic pulse right from its mouth to short-circuit the grazer's nervous system. Then, it swallows the prey into a blast furnace stomach that literally smelts it down into raw base metals. It's absolutely wild.
Which brings us to Section 2, a civilization of steel and the forge of intelligence. Let's look at what happens when this biology gets smart.
So what actually happens when this fluid, metallic biology crawls onto the scorched surface and develops a brain? Well, human neurobiology relies on slow chemical signals firing across synapses. We are heavily limited by our watery makeup. But an iron-based consciousness? They would compute using solid-state physics and highly conductive circuits. Their thoughts would be a continuous, synchronized dance of quantum spin states, operating at a massive fraction of the speed of light.
So the crucial point is, how does an iron intelligence build a civilization? They wouldn't even need to invent fire, because their biology literally is the forge. Since their bodies naturally function as radio transmitters, they'd have this kind of telepathic Wi-Fi, transferring gigabytes of data instantly between each other. They'd sculpt massive architecture just by using directed magnetic fields. And their astronomy? Entirely based on sensing vast cosmic magnetic pulses in the dark.
Which leads me to a question I really want to pose directly to you. Think about it. How does a biological being made of solid iron and superpressurized liquid metal go to space? You have to forget literally everything you know about highly explosive chemical rockets and fragile pressurized spacesuits. They simply don't need them. Instead, they'd construct massive planetary-scale railguns built right into the crust of their world. They'd reverse their localized magnetic polarities, load themselves into super-dense biological arcs, and literally shoot themselves into orbit. Once they hit the vacuum of space, they'd deploy miles-wide magnetic sails to catch the solar winds. They'd use the very electromagnetism that birthed them to blast right out into the cosmos.
And because of this extreme evolutionary path, they are the absolute perfect astronauts. They're completely immune to intense cosmic radiation. In fact, it probably just charges their carapaces. The freezing vacuum of space would simply induce a deep, superconducting slumber. Their internal liquids are so highly pressurized they wouldn't boil off, and they have exactly zero reliance on oxygen. They could safely drift between the stars for millions of years.
But you know what's really funny? The ultimate irony here is that to an iron-based entity, our beautiful Earth is a freezing, toxic wasteland filled with a deadly, highly reactive gas called oxygen. To their biology, oxygen causes horrific rusting and death. If they pass by Earth, they'd look at us and think we were the terrifying, impossible extremophiles somehow surviving in a frozen nightmare.
Let's move to Section 3, the shadow biosphere, and see how this rewrites the Drake equation.
So, why does this highly speculative biology matter for actual modern astrobiology? Let's see how this builds into a real scientific concept called the shadow biosphere. This is the theory that alien life remains completely undiscovered simply because our tools only search for exact Earth-like biosignatures. If we pointed the James Webb Space Telescope at a thriving iron civilization on Hephaestus Prime, our computers would just tell us it's a dead, irradiated rock. We would literally look right past a continent-spanning crystalline metropolis.
To put that into perspective, just think about the immense scale of biological time. The universe began 13.8 billion years ago. Earth only formed 4.5 billion years ago, and our carbon-based biology popped up shortly after. But physics and chemistry are universal. The cosmos has rolled the dice on life trillions of times in extreme environments we can barely comprehend. The universe is absolutely not limited by our human lack of imagination.
Please like and subscribe.